What kind of player are the Dallas Cowboys getting with Tyler Booker? We'll break it down next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we're going to do a deep dive into Cowboys first-round pick, Tyler Booker. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing one of these shows and a lot of the top draft picks that the Cowboys made over the weekend to really understand how this player fits within the Cowboys offense or defense. And Lena, let's start with Tyler Booker, the prospect. Let's go back before we think about the fit and the upside and the projection here. What did you see from Booker, the prospect coming out of Alabama?
Yeah, just, a physical mauler. I mean, I think that's like, you see it on his tape, you watch the video, the interview with him, you listen to him talk about football, and it all lines up as this is a guy who loves to bury people in the run game. He loves to protect his quarterback in the pass game. He likes to use his physical ability to dominate other players, and you see it on tape, right? He loves finishing guys. He loves finishing on top. He loves, whether it. I mean, I think I tweeted out a video of him blocking a guy out, on a screen, I think it was. And then at the kind of near the end of the play, Booker kind of turns around and the guy's still trying to run through him, and he just backs into the guy and falls down to him. He loves to put people on the ground and make them quit, and you see it throughout tape. It's not just a talk. He's physically moving bodies. He's got really strong technique, and he uses those two things to clear out spaces for in the run game, to create holes, to create a strong pocket at the front, and he's just one of these guys that it's not him shielding off blockers, shielding off blocks, or getting in position and just kind of being a wall. This guy's putting bodies on the ground. He's eliminating his man from the play, and I think it's going to provide an attitude for this offensive line that I think the Cowboys have really, really needed and wanted.
So I've got a couple of notes and I just want your thoughts on when I was watching him. So one of the things is I kind of think he's a better pass blocker than run blocker right now. And the reason why is, so last year he gave up 10 total pressures, but 2 of them came when he was playing left tackle early in the season. As a guard only, 8 total pressures. And I think part of it is because Alabama's splits, the offensive line splits, are pretty close. The guys are not like, you watch the Chiefs and you see how big some of these splits are. Alabama keeps their offensive linemen really close together, and he's so good at just anchoring down on these these defensive tackles that they just can't bully him, right? So I'm thinking in the NFL, or my hope is that the Cowboys are going to use some tighter splits, to potentially use some of the strength and size of their offensive line. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something they're going to want to do anyways, just because of the talk about, condensed formations. But then on top of that, I think that's just something that you want to do when you're running more gap, more man, right? You want a little bit kind of closer splits, so those guys that are kind of folding underneath each other have a little bit less to go around. And to your point, I do think that one of the strengths that Tyler Booker has, and the splits are obviously a part of that for sure, but also one of the strengths that Tyler Booker has is that he plays with a very strong wide base.
Yes.
Some of these guys.
And he's long. 34 and a half inch arms, 84-inch wingspans. He's just a big dude.
Yeah, and what that means is that he can play with the wide base. He can play with a nice trail hand too, right? So it's harder to kind of run stunts and games on the inside of him, on the outside of him, because even if he's not staring at it, he can feel it with his hand over here, right? He strikes early because he has the long arms that blunts the momentum before you're able to kind of get into his hands. Now he's not perfect yet. Obviously, he's still got some stuff to work on, learning how to refit his hands. Sometimes his hands can get a little bit wide, and he has the length and the athleticism to recover from that. But what he needs to work on a little bit better is how quickly he's resetting his hands inside. So, but I think as far as being an obstacle for a defensive tackle to try to have to get around. I do think that playing with a wide base, having that length, it just makes you a very difficult human being to try to get around.
I wanted to talk about the run stuff because, again, I thought he was a pretty awesome pass blocker, and I can see him being a better pass blocker than run blocker right away in the NFL, as long as he's not going up against a lot of. I think his problem might be like these undersized defensive tackles that are extremely quick that can kind of maybe get underneath him. But like your general 315-pound defensive tackle that wants to get into a fist fight with Tyler Booker, I'm betting on him to win those matchups.
Yeah, and I'll say this, 100%, I think that there's a chance that some of these quicker, undersized guys may get a winner here or two. But the reps that they don't get the win, like, are, potentially they're going to the hospital. Like, I mean, because Booker's going to put this guy 3 feet under the turf. Because, that's what he does. Like, he especially loves to beat up on smaller players a little bit. So I think I probably agree with that. He might be a little bit better pass protector immediately, just simply because he is physically tough to get around. But I would say that he is going to come in and immediately improve the run game, even if that isn't the best aspect of his game, because he is so strong. He's athletic enough to get out on the hoof. He's patient when he's in space. He hits smaller targets without any problems. So, and I think especially with the kind of new emphasis on the way that they're running the football, he's going to really fit what they do to a T, and is going to be a point of emphasis. He's going to be a player that they run the football behind, not just like the kind of improved weak link on this offensive line.
Just really quickly, as a run blocker, like when he's blocking defensive ends and defensive tackles, like he can move them off the screen. I think there are some times where if you're asking him to like get to the second level, maybe he doesn't finish as well as you would expect on linebackers. But again, the Cowboys are probably going to ask him just to do a lot of duo blocks and just try to blow up holes in the run game. I think he's going to be great at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even with the second level stuff, when he doesn't get to the guy, like if he isn't able to break down and get his hands on this guy, he's still so big that it's like it's hard for the linebacker to get through him to make the play. So usually, even if he doesn't get his hands on the guy, his size is such and his athleticism is such that he can at least, that's where he can do some shield blocking kind of at the second level, where he's just, hey, I'm here. Good luck trying to get around me to make a tackle.
Couple quick notes on the prospect before we move on. If you look at like the history, Landon, of these offensive linemen that have been like multi-year starters in the SEC, most of them end up turning out. And even someone like Tyler Booker, he was a freshman All-American. He only started one game, but he played quite a bit for Alabama. I'm looking at the numbers here. 230 snaps as a freshman. That's not insignificant, right? But over the last 2 years, full-time starter, second team All-SEC, first team All-American. I think teams get in trouble when they're drafting guys that have not been good offensive linemen yet, and they're hoping they get better in the NFL. I don't think that's the case here. Like Tyler Booker was an awesome, awesome player in college.
Yeah, that's kind of was my point with a lot of the questions with, some of the athletic stuff, is that, I mean, you just like you watch the tape and you see it, like this guy's going to be able to do it. Like he does every single thing that you're going to ask him to do in the NFL. His athleticism is not a problem there. And that's where it's like, I think, the testing stuff is important for making sure that you go back and recheck that stuff, especially when you're talking about lower competition stuff. Like for some of these guys, you just need to kind of compare that athleticism.
I do think there's some scheme stuff, like let's say Brian Schottenheimer's fired 2 years from now, and the Cowboys bring in Mike McDonald to run their, Mike McDaniel to run their offense.
Okay.
And when they want to run wide zone stuff, I've got my concerns about him being a guard in a wide zone offense.
I mean, let's be fair. The Dolphins also just drafted Jonah Savei, who is
but
not,
he's a good athlete though. I like him quite a bit.
But he's very exclusively a guard only, and
I agree.
Frankly, not so much an outside zone guard. But you're not wrong in that sense. That I think if you were gonna go to a Shanahan type system, you'd probably be in trouble with this guy, or have a difficult fit. However, if you had a 285-pound tackle and you were going to a gap system,
fair.
Probably going to have the same problem as well. Going to move that guy to tight end. So, I think that's kind of generally the issue. Problem with like trying to athletically bucket some of these players at defensive tackle and guard is that the number of the variety of players that go into those buckets are all extremely different.
Sure. All right, let's talk about his fit with the Dallas Cowboys, because that's all that really matters right now. We're not evaluating him for a wide zone offense. We're talking about the Brian Schottenheimer offense. What is that going to look like? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are discussing Dallas Cowboys first-round pick Tyler Booker. And Landon, let's talk about his fit in this offense. Now, we're not quite sure exactly where he's going to play. I think the expectation is right guard, but how does he fit a Brian Schottenheimer, Klayton Adams offense?
I think he fits very well, right? And I think if we're talking about we've been discussing a move to more gap, more man schemes. Let's talk about the kind of blocks that you're doing there, right? There's a lot of pulling and getting to the outside. On the other side, if you're the play side guard, right? There's a lot of down blocking, right? And I think, man, I would not want to be down blocked by Tyler Booker. Like I would want to know it's coming at least, and then maybe prep myself. But I think in the down blocking scheme, if you're asking him to be a puller, if you're asking him to get hip to hip with, let's say, Terrence Steele and drive a guy off the ball in duo, I just think he's going to be top notch and all that. In my opinion, he's going to be the tip of the spear in this run game. I think a lot of these runs will go behind him, and being able to alternate which side you want to run the ball on with a puller and play side guard combo of Tyler Smith and Booker, and then being able to kind of flop those sides. It's just going to give you so much flexibility and balance in the run game. And then the trio, right? Like let's assume right now, let's imagine right now that he's going to be the right guard. Having that kind of stout trio in front of Dak Prescott in the passing game, a guy who is spoken many times about wanting to have the strong front pocket and being able to deal with pressure on the outside. That's where he's comfortable with the pressure coming from. But having that kind of strong pocket up front, combined with a re-emphasis and an actual, leveling up, honestly, of the commitment to the run game. I think that those two things are going to help this offense find identity, find some balance. Because go back to 2021. Right, when this offense was at times, I think it was the number one offense in football, right? And you go back and you look at and really go back to 2023 too. I think a similar situation, right, where you had a really, really good offense, but there were just so many times when it felt like, despite having this incredible statistical offense, you couldn't move the ball, or you couldn't consistently get the first downs you needed. You couldn't kind of managed to punch through. I think having some consistency in the run game, having a physical mindset, and not just talking about it, not just talking about being a good run team, but actually investing in the physical players you need to move bodies to actually embodiment that physicality. I think it's going to go a long way, and and having two guards now that can maul people, move bodies as you need them. It's going to give your run game incredible balance to kind of go either way and attack a defense the way you need.
One of the things I love about Pro Football Focus is they break down every run, and you can see the grades on how Tyler Booker performed on every run. So we'll get to the first one, the one he was the most successful with in a second. But actually, the most successful run block that Tyler Booker had was actually inside zone. He was very, very good. I would expect, I know the Cowboys are going to be a gap team, but I would expect a lot of inside zones from Klayton Adams and Brian Schottenheimer, right?
Inside zone is a vertical attacking. It's a downhill run.
Downhill,
right?
yes.
That's the difference between inside and outside zone. Obviously, besides the inside and outside part, is that inside zone you're taking one step sideways and then you're getting the running back's getting downhill to make that read instead of kind of widening things out and then potentially breaking it back a lot more. So yes, that makes a ton of sense because the guard is hip checking a nose tackle into the center and then getting vertical up to the second level to take off on a linebacker. That makes a lot of sense that that's his highest grade.
Well, and if you look at like his run blocking grades on PFF, and again, PFF is not the end all be all when it comes to grades, but his overall run blocking grade this year was like a 64. But if you look at just the types of runs that Dallas is planning on using, which is like inside zone, man, maybe some pull lead, we'll see how much they do there. But he actually graded out well above that in all of those that matter. Now, his most successful block type, and this one's Jerry Jones kind of talked about this, was a quarterback sneak. And I know this is such a small portion of your offense, Landon, but Jerry Jones said, hey, maybe we can run some of that tush push ourselves with Tyler Booker. Do you think adding someone like Booker actually makes that a more viable option?
I think it makes it more viable option to do more QB sneaks for sure. Let me ask you something real quick. Do you have that still in front of you right now?
I do.
Do they split out any other QB runs there? Because
no, just quarterback sneak. No,
so
not like quarterback design runs or anything like that.
So I'm wondering if QB sneak, if like that doesn't also include QB power, which was his favorite play to run this season, which is basically just a power run inside with the QB. So if that's the case, that would also make a lot of sense, right? Because it feeds right into what he is doing on his job well. And I also think it's a quick hitter power run that they love to run. You don't see a ton of because most teams don't have a quarterback like that that can run it.
And if you look at some of his, the runs that were the least successful, it's a lot of outside zone, counter, stuff where your offensive linemen really need to move a lot. And that's just not the strength of his game. And I would anticipate the Cowboys just aren't going to run a lot of that this year.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see outside zone, but certainly they're going to play to their strength, right? They're going to play to the more man gap power stuff that they want to do now that they've got the players and the horses up front to run at that.
All right, let's talk about what this means, the selection of Tyler Booker to the Cowboys at 12, what it means for their offensive line depth, and what are some potential outcomes for Tyler Booker with the Cowboys. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place so you can stop managing your money and start building your wealth. I've been using Monarch Money for at least 3-4 months now, and I've realized how much money I was spending on stupid stuff like food delivery or coffee runs that I didn't need. But now I am budgeting smarter and I'm saving more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and the news never stops. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Landon, let's first talk about the depth chart here for the Cowboys, because going into the draft, they already had a lot of interior offensive line depth with Brock Hoffman, Robert Jones, who started 17 games for Miami. They signed Hakeem Adeji. They had TJ Bass. They signed Shady Charles.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that they're clearly going to need to do something about some of these players, right? Like, I just don't know that. I mean, and that's also not to include the guys they already had. We talked about Hoffman and Bass, but Dakota Shepley, right? And guys like, Richards was playing some guard as well. So they have more than they could possibly use at the interior offensive line. So they're probably going to need to sort through that. I also think that, they're probably the other thing that we kind of have briefly discussed that I think we should at least kind of put back out there is that this is a new offensive line coach. This is a new offense. There is a chance that there could be some shakeup on the positions of who's playing where on this offensive line. There is a possibility, I would assume, that Tyler Smith could potentially be kicked out to left tackle, or maybe you want to move Guyton around. Or maybe this team doesn't view Guyton a certain way, or there's just a lot of different ways that this offensive line coach could view this situation and potentially move things around. So obviously they've got to do something about the depth and the kind of the number of specifically interior offensive line folks they have. But it's also going to be interesting to see exactly, like we said, how they decide to assemble this line. I would have to guess, as it is right now, that it's going to be as chalk as we think it is. It's going to be Guyton, Smith, Beebe, Booker, Steele. But there obviously is a chance that they may want to move things around a little bit. I think the key thing here to remember is that, and let's discuss this a little bit, right? The offensive line is a kind of a weak link system, right? And one of the benefits of taking Tyler Booker is that you have now greatly raised the floor on that weak link, right? I mean, I love Hoffman. I think he performed admirably last year, but I think Booker is just a different level, different tier of player, and I think it raised the floor on that offensive line a lot. Now the question becomes Steele and Guyton, who become kind of the two dueling, what are we doing with these guys sort of situation. I think that Booker playing next to Steele is going to help Steele play a lot better football, right? I think when Steele was playing at his best is he didn't have to worry about that right guard as much. And then when he could work with Zach Martin to get hip to hip on duo runs where he can go downhill, I think Booker is going to allow him to do that a lot more. This offensive coordinator is going to lean into what Steele does better. And I think he's hopefully going to play better football this year. What do you think?
I think there's also part of it, like if they feel like Booker can come right in and play well, then it's just a lot easier to help out tackles than it is to help out guards.
For sure.
Right? You can do things with, rolling out your quarterback or putting tight ends over there or chipping or whatever you need to do. But if you have three really strong, good interior offensive linemen, there are a lot of different ways to cover that up. I think the Chiefs are a good example last year. Their tackles were atrocious, but their interior, the offensive line was so strong that they were able to get to the Super Bowl because of it. Now, they had their issues once they got to the Super Bowl, but that's beyond the point. But I do think it's probably going to help Steele having somebody with a little bit more power. I wanted to ask you kind of like a comp question from Tyler Booker. So I've been struggling to find a good comp, but I wanted to ask you, how does Booker compare to Landon Jackson, another former Alabama offensive lineman? Now, he was dealing with, I think, a torn ACL coming into the draft process, and that's why he went in the second round. But as a prospect, how would you compare him to Dickerson?
I think he's a little bit stronger than Dickerson is. But I think Dickerson may be a little bit more athletic on the hoof, if I'm not mistaken. I think that Guyton looks as good on the hoof though, because Guyton is a more smooth. I'm sorry, Booker. Sorry, all these
we got
Tylers,
too many doggone Tylers.
There's too many Tylers, man. And the other day I was calling Beebe Tyler Beebe. I was so confused.
He might have to change his name to fit on this offensive line.
At this point, Booker. I think Booker is not the athlete that Landon Jackson is, but I think that he's smoother. So I think it looks similar. Yeah, I think that they're probably comparable players. I think that Booker may just be a little bit more heftier and stronger.
Yeah. I just wanted to compare an Alabama offensive lineman who, if you remember Nick Saban talking about Landon Dickerson, like he would cry when he was talking about it because he was that type of leader. And that kind of, I remember some of these big games with Dickerson and how emotional he got. So that's kind of a school comp. I've got a player comp that I wanted to throw out to you. And that's Trey Smith, who played at Tennessee. I think
That's
Smith likely would have been a first-round pick if it weren't for a heart issue that showed up at the combine.
Absolutely.
But Trey Smith was 6'5.5", 321, had really long arms. Booker's actually has a bigger wingspan and has longer arms. Smith was the better overall athlete.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of how they play, it's similar.
It's funny because when you said Kansas City play, with their tackles, I was sitting there going, yeah, Kansas City showed us what it looks like if you play Tyler Booker at offensive tackle, because I do think that is a good comparison. And obviously Smith is a little bit better of an athlete. But Booker himself actually compares himself to Tyler Smith, and he says he models his game after Smith. It does make a lot of sense. They do look alike. They do kind of move alike, despite Smith being, like you said, a little bit fleeter of foot. I think that all the reasons, the differences between the two players, right, are the reasons why you could feel maybe a little bit better about playing Tyler Smith at offensive tackle in the playoffs than you probably would playing Tyler Booker offensive tackle in the playoffs, right? But I still think that as far as who's going to be a people mover, I think Booker may eventually be a better kind of physical player than Smith, which is, I mean, that's really saying something.
That's an all-pro player for kids.
It's no slouch, at all, by any stretch of the imagination.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen. Check out the show on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. On tomorrow's show, we'll take a look at Donovan Ezraku, the Cowboys' second-round edge rusher. Make sure you tune in for that.